Okay, we're back from the barn with our apples that I've cored and peeled. These are the last apples of the season, but luckily we have some for our dessert, which I'll tell you about in a minute. The menu today, we're going to start with garlic samurai bread. And if you haven't made samurai bread, please go to my website and look for Okano's Kitchen samurai bread. 6 easy steps. You can have your own French baguette in less than 2 hours. And in my cookbook, I show you all these great options for making samurai bread in different forms. Go to the back for samurai bread tips and tricks. Comes with your own pan, and you're just going to be so happy while baking. Let's get started on our samurai garlic bread. I've got a loaf here ready to go that I made this morning, but you can also freeze samurai bread. You just wrap it in some foil and take it out of the freezer, put it in the oven for about 10 minutes at 300, and you get this beautiful crusty bread. So I'm going to cut this in half. And then I've made just a little garlic and herb butter with some garlic salt and fresh garlic and I think parsley and thyme. And I'm going to spread that on this bread, which is going to be so delicious to dip in the sauce. And bouillabaise is really all about the sauce, which it's a beautiful dish that was created in the south of France. Kind of a, I don't want to say, well, poor man's meal. I mean, they had a lot of leftover fish, and they figured out a way to use all the pieces of the fish to make the broth, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. But meanwhile, we're going to just cover this samurai bread, put it to bed in a nice piece of tin foil, and stick that in the oven while we make our soup. So before I get going with the bouillabaisse, I'm going to put my potatoes in the oven. Smashed potatoes, oh my gosh, one of our favorites. I like to use red potatoes, but you can use really any potato as long as it's on the small size, just easier to smash. And what I've done is I've boiled these potatoes until they're soft, and soft enough to basically smash. After washing my hands, I've coated this pan with a little olive oil, and I'm just going to take my hand and literally smash the potato. The pan is coated with oil, and now I'm just going to smash those. Boom, boom. And simply season them with some salt and pepper. And those are going to be cooking in the oven at about 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes, so they're nice and crispy. A little salt and freshly ground pepper. Simple. You could put a little garlic powder on here if you wanted, or if you wanted to get fancy, you could take some sage leaves and decorate it with some sage and a little olive oil on top, but I'm just going to make it simple for today. There you go, and I'm going to stick those in the oven, along with our samurai garlic bread. Before I start into the bouillabaisse, I want to get my apples for the Tart Tatin going, and I wanted to show you that. I basically melted a half a cup of butter and a cup of sugar in this frying pan, and now I'm going to cook the apples that I've cut and quartered and peeled, and these are going to cook for about 30 minutes until this turns into kind of a caramely brown color. And then we are going to roll out this crust and roll it out into a circle and then stick that in and then put it in the oven. But I just wanted to show you that, and we'll get that going, and then we'll move on to our bouillabaisse. Okay, let's get going with the bouillabaisse, because normally this takes all day, but I figured out, and I watched online and read about different chefs who have figured out a way to make it more user-friendly in a home kitchen, because this is a home kitchen, this is not a professional kitchen. So what we're first going to do is work on the broth. And what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to saute our vegetables. We've got fennel. Okay, let's turn the oven on. Yeah, it's on. I'm in the burner. Fennel, some carrots, some onions and leeks. Cooking is all about the chopping. I mean, if I hadn't chopped this would be taking us all day. But we chop that up, and then some garlic, and we're going to saute that up a little bit. Turn that up. while that's sizzling, we're gonna add in actually some of the fish that we're gonna put in the bouillabaisse, but we're gonna just use this fish for the broth itself. And we've got here, I have scallops, a few shrimp, and we're gonna cut these shrimp up and actually use them in the shell, and some monkfish. Now you can be creative about what sort of fish you wanna put in. You can add clams, you could add whatever kind of fish you prefer. So we're gonna cut up that shrimp in the shell, and that's gonna season, that's gonna make the broth so tasty. So the shrimp, and we're gonna have a couple of scallops here, and then a couple of pieces of them. I'm actually gonna save some of that for the soup. And we're gonna just put this right in. With the vegetables that we're gonna saute up. All right, so now we're gonna add some fresh thyme leaves. I just kind of scoop them off the stems. And we don't need to worry about chunky things in this because we're gonna put this in the immersion blender, and this is going to be the stock. So it's kind of fun that way because it doesn't have to be exact. We're gonna also add in some chopped tomatoes. You could use fresh tomatoes if you had it. And some tomato paste. A little paprika. Some white wine. And then we're gonna let that, I'm actually gonna add a little water too. Look at this cool thing I have. Oh my God. Little water. And we're gonna let that cook for about 20 minutes. Now we can't forget la pièce de résistance for bouillabaisse, which is this little tiny bit of saffron. Can you believe that these little stamens from flowers add the most delicious flavor that you can imagine on the planet? Well, here we are. It's very expensive because it's just, you know, tiny thing from flowers. Anyway, we're gonna take a couple of pinches. Actually, it just gives the bouillabaisse that delicious, that deep yellow color, but it has a very distinct flavor. And now we're gonna just keep on letting this cook. Okay, I think I better taste this broth with my tasting spoon to see how we're doing, see if it's ready to put in the immersion blender. Oh my God, it's fantastic. It's all about the broth, and I'm gonna add a little Pernod from Paris. Why not? Pernod from Paris. Now we're going to put it in the immersion blender. Turn off the oven, the stove. And try not to make too much of a mess. I'm just gonna, and if you don't have enough liquid, this is so rich with all the fish. I'm gonna actually add some water as well. Okay, so as you can see, these apples have been cooking in sugar and butter for about 40 minutes, and they develop this yummy looking brown sauce. And you arrange your apples so they look pretty. And then we're gonna roll out a crust. I made this crust actually at Thanksgiving. It's been in the freezer, so I just happened to have one ready to go. And I'm gonna roll this out and just set it on top of those apples and stick it in the oven, and then flip it over, and we have a beautiful French-inspired Tart Tatin. So here we go. Is that about the right size? Well, yeah. Okay, hopefully it won't stick too much. Pull it up. And then tuck in the edges of the crust. I love the crust. In fact, it's all about the crust in my book. That's it. We're just gonna stick that in the oven at 375. On to the next course. So I've strained all the makings of my broth, and now we just have this delicious saffron, Pernod, all those veggies, flavored broth. And now we're going to gently cook the fish in the soup broth itself. And we're going to start with the fish that will take the longest time. So I'll take like maybe 1 or 2 pieces of that. We're going to just serve 2 people, so we're going to, and then we're going to gently baste it with the broth. We'll take a couple more pieces actually. This monkfish. Then I'm going to put in a couple of scallops and gently baste. And the shrimp. So you're just going to cook this fish really gently in the broth. Okay. So that's going to cook just gently for maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And while that's cooking, I'm going to check my potatoes, because I think they might be done. Potatoes are done. Let's take those out of the oven. So we've got our smashed potatoes. Oh yeah, that look nice and crispy and yummy and ready to dip in our soup. And the samurai bread, garlic bread, is also ready. Everything's nicely melted and ready to slice and dip. And the fish is almost done. So I think we should get ready to plate this up. Are we ready to serve some bouillabaisse? Yes, oh, the fish is nicely cooked. I'm gonna start with this delicious, beautiful broth. Look at the color of this broth, it's unbelievable. And you don't need a whole lot of fish in everybody's bowl. You're just gonna give them a little tasting of the monkfish, maybe a couple of scallops, a couple of shrimp, and you are gonna have a happy guest. Look at that. Now I'm going to garnish that with a little of my fennel fronds that I saved from when I made my broth. And perhaps, shall we garnish it with a peu de poivre, little pepper? So that's fun. And we have our smashed potatoes. I love flat leaf parsley, so I'm going to add a couple of those pieces on everybody's plate. But hold on a second. Let me just serve a couple of smashed potatoes that will go so nicely in this beautiful broth. The smashed potatoes have a little crunch. I'm going to garnish them with a little parsley, because parsley is just such a yummy taste. With that, it's all about the taste, but it's also about how pretty it is. And of course, we have samuai garlic bread. Look at that. Oh, the garlicky, buttery, herby delight that comes when you're a samurai. You have to belong to the Samurai Bread Club, because how are you going to know how delicious this is if you don't belong? I'm just going to serve it up like that, and so you can see the beautiful herbs. And then we can't forget our Tart Tatin for dessert that I flipped out of the oven when you weren't looking. And as you can see, the apples caramelized on the bottom, the crust was on the top, so you flip it over. I did it in a non-stick pan, which makes it a little bit easier. But let's cut that up and see what happens with our beautiful fall apples. It sounds fancy, but it really isn't a fancy dessert. You saw, it just requires patience for letting those apples cook down. And voila. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I really tried to make bouillabaisse more approachable, because sometimes these French-sounding dishes can be kind of scary, and I could never make that, but actually you can. And hopefully you got some tips from this episode. Our bouillabaisse, smashed potatoes, I mean, couldn't be easier. Anyone can make a smashed potato. Of course, samurai bread goes with everything, because you can dip it in the sauce. Go to my website, oconnorskitchen.com, and get your kit today. And then our beautiful Tart Tatin for dessert, and also a really approachable dessert that you can make in your home any night of the week. I hope you enjoy it. In fact, should we take a taste? Oh, I think so. I think we should take a little taste. All right, let's see what we did here with my apples that I've been saving just for you. Oh, I wish you could taste one. Doesn't even need ice cream. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your coming into my home. See you next time.
Welcome to the Mountain Guides. They operate 5 mountain guiding companies in the American West: the Mountain Guides of Utah, the Mountain Guides of Red Rock, the Mountain Guides of Montana, the Mountain Guides of Colorado. Their flagship operation in Jackson Hole is based in Jackson and leading trips all over the high peaks of the Rocky Mountains. Join their custom mountain adventures led by experienced guides in the iconic destinations. For more information, log on to themountainguides.com.